Cybersecurity certainly isn't slowing down, and neither are we. Secure CyberConnect are thrilled to be back and be part of the Cyber Leaders Summit this coming 3rd and 4th of November in Manchester. This private, curated forum brings together senior practitioners, decision makers, and thought leaders from across the cyber sector, focused on actionable insights, strategic leadership, and peer-driven conversations. It's about more than trends. We're tackling real challenges, sharing breach case stories, navigating regulation, talking about well-being, and building meaningful relationships that move the industry forward. If you're looking for sharp thinking, practical takeaways, and high-level connections, then register your interest in the link in the bio below.
This is the Secure CyberConnect podcast with Jay Adamson and Warren Atkinson, where we're joined by information, cybersecurity, technology, and talent acquisition professionals to share their journeys, unique perspectives, and offer advice and guidance. Our topics on this episode will be the fight to protect our water and cybersecurity and critical national infrastructure. Today, we're absolutely thrilled to be joined by Matthew Greaves. Matthew is the head of cyber and protective security at Yorkshire Water, where he leads the efforts to safeguard the water supply from both physical and cybersecurity threats, ensuring that when you and I turn on the tap, the water flows reliably and is safe to use. As part of his role, his responsibilities also include the full spectrum of security such as SecOps, InfoSec, cyber physical, people and electronic security. He's passionate about nurturing grassroots cyber talent, and he's a committed advocate for the next generation of security professionals. Matthew's also actively supporting the NCSC's Cyber First as an active cyber ambassador and is acting advisor to the Cyber Bradford board. Matthew, welcome to Secure CyberConnect podcast, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. That's quite the introduction. Hello.
Absolutely. So we'll kick things off with a few sort of rudimentary questions. Firstly, if you could just give us a very brief, high-level overview of some of the key themes that we're going to be exploring in our discussions on the episode.
Yeah, of course. I thought it would be quite interesting maybe to the listeners to have a chat about securing critical national infrastructure, something that perhaps doesn't get much discussion until something goes wrong. Maybe describe kind of what it is that we do, what we're responsible for, and how we try and keep the baddies out, I guess. Absolutely.
So just sort of maybe tell us something that that you may be proud of or excited about that isn't typically to be found on your LinkedIn account, for example.
So I go to kind of great pains to try and keep my LinkedIn account as vague as possible. Try and avoid the sales approaches that come regularly. However, there's a little bit on there. Actually, this week I've just retired from 20 years of service with the local mountain rescue team here in sort of Yorkshire. So big milestone event for me this
Amazing. I thought you were going to tell us you'd retired from the job at Yorkshire Water then. So this is a really badly timed episode, isn't it?
No, I think I've got unless things change, a few more years to run on that one, hopefully.
Are we still in safe hands if we go hiking in the Yorkshire Dells?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've been with the Calder Valley Search and Rescue Team now as an operational member for 20 odd years, most recently as chair, but having done various roles throughout, it's really fulfilling. But kind of what I was finding was I was spending less and less time actually getting out on the hills and getting to training. So I've decided to sort of step back from it, but still remain active supporter and very firmly actively involved with the team as well. So yeah, teams of volunteers all over the country will come and rescue you should you get into trouble in wild and remote places.
That's important.
And look, for our audience, if you are in the Yorkshire region or you are out hiking and you want to donate to charity and a cause, of course, that's certainly one worthwhile highlighting.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
I mean, typically we always ask a bit of an icebreaker with our guests if they can describe maybe a pivotal moment, a significant challenge that they faced at some point in their career that maybe shaped your views on cybersecurity.
Yeah, so possibly not a challenge, maybe like some of your the other guests that you've had on the podcast. I'm fairly late in my career into cybersecurity specifically. I've sort of been in a dedicated cyber role now for getting on for 5 years. Prior to that, I was on the change side, delivering kind of projects and programs, largely spending most of my time trying to avoid the InfoSec team to try and get delivering as quickly as possible without the perceived handbrake of the InfoSec team. I think kind of the flip from poacher turned gamekeeper, if you like, probably is a bit of a pivotal moment in that kind of even though involved on the fringes of cybersecurity, not necessarily having the sort of depth of understanding around the why. I think it's something that cyber teams need to get better at when engaging with not just the delivery teams, but kind of the wider teams across any organization, is kind of getting into the why. It's really obvious when someone gets whacked, obviously that's what we want to try and prevent, but a lot of the controls and things actually are introduced through change. That we want people to make sure are implemented, so we're kind of securing as we're delivering, not as an afterthought. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that's perhaps shaped how I approach cybersecurity, certainly at Yorkshire Water.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about why, utilities and specifically, water security matters so much. Now, a lot of people, when they think about water, it's obviously taken for granted. They certainly don't tend to think about cybersecurity being connected. Now, why should they?
So it's one of the things that I must admit, until I started working in the utility sector, I'd never really given much thought to kind of what goes into just when you turn the tap on or you flick a switch and the light comes on, as to kind of making sure that either the water or the electricity in that case, or gas, any of them, what goes into actually getting it to you. And I think we all take it for granted that when you turn the tap on, the water's going to come out. But actually, kind of in the background to all of that, there is, whilst we've got lots of guys and gals out there kind of working on the network, you'll see them driving around in vans, you'll see all of our reservoirs, some of the walking perhaps that you might do in Yorkshire is around some of our beautiful reservoirs. But what you don't get a feel for really is it's actually technology underpinning the distribution and the production of water in our case, that actually without that technology very quickly we start to struggle to then either be able to produce the water or move the water around the Yorkshire region. So that was kind of a really important thing for me, was actually there's technology that sits on this, and then you just have to look at the likes of Ukraine or kind of what's been going on in Gaza and Israel to understand that that certainly the nation states have worked out that if you can, this grey warfare that we're hearing about at the moment, if you can disrupt the supply of some of these critical national infrastructure type organizations, actually that can have a real impact on the society that the kinetic warfare and bombs at the moment can't have. I guess to kind of take that even further, some of the threat actors have now worked out that going after some of this critical national infrastructure with a view to trying to ransom is potentially quite a lucrative thing for them to do, in that it reaches a point where possibly the only potential option to try and get service back is to possibly pay a ransom, which makes us quite a juicy target to them.
Well, it is the very lifeblood of our existence, water, isn't it? So it makes complete sense for this to be a high impact target area. And what does your role tend to look like on a day-to-day basis? Now, how big is the mission? How important is it?
Yeah, so across Yorkshire, we've got about 5 million domestic customers. We've got some obviously very big commercial customers. Steel industry obviously uses quite a lot of water. Coca-Cola is actually also one of our big customers. They've got a bottling plant in the region as well. So, we supply them with one of their key raw materials. We've got around about 650 treatment works. And then if I think about sort of endpoints, we've got probably 15,000 sort of laptops, servers that we have to secure, and getting on for 250,000 devices out in the wild, which are sending data back to the centre, which we then use to kind of help us work out where we need to produce more water, ship it around the country, and of course we also need to treat the water as well. So my remit is securing all of that from a cyber and also from a physical security perspective, and also making sure that the people that we have working on our critical national infrastructure are appropriate people to be in such positions of responsibility.
No pressure then?
Not at all.
Was there a moment where maybe going back to sort of maybe a pivotal moment where you realised just how truly critical your job really is?
Yes, I think fairly early on after I took the role at Yorkshire Water, there was a well-publicised South Staffs incident where Klopp managed to get into their network and ransom them. And that was the first one kind of in the UK, quite close to home. That was a real, oh crikey, this is not theoretical. This just got real kind of thing, I guess.
So, Matthew, you mentioned that utilities is a juicy target. Why do you think that critical national infrastructure attracts so much attention? And how has that threat landscape changed over the last, say, 5 to 6 years?
Yeah, really good question, Warren. I think sort of things have been evolving over the last 5 or 6 years. The main threat that we were sort of really worried about was malware, ransomware, that kind of thing. That is still obviously really prevalent and very high up there on our sort of list of threats to be worried about. But over the last 3 years, we've seen increasingly instability across the globe. We've got a war on sort of the east of Europe in Ukraine. There's also lots going on in the Middle East at the moment, which is bringing increasing instability. And as a result of that, we are obviously more concerned, or becoming more concerned, about some of the state actors, which are obviously really sophisticated. So they are kind of making their way up our sort of list of people to be worried about as well. So kind of from my perspective, it's a sort of increasingly hostile environment that we operate in. And I think to your point as well, sort of being that juicy target, there was the attack on Colonial Pipeline, again, back in, I think it was 2019, 2020, which is critical national infrastructure in the US. And I think the baddies saw kind of how much disruption that actually brought and the pressure that that put onto Colonial Pipeline to try and get them to pay a ransom. And I think they did end up paying a ransom in that particular instance, although I think some of it somehow was mysteriously clawed back by the FBI in that instance. But kind of we're now on the radar and are seen as being a potential target for the baddies to go after.
Yeah, and we see a lot of reports and studies around sort of threat actors trying to live off the land, sitting within networks, within critical national infrastructure. There was actually a report published yesterday by the FBI and another member in the US that confirmed there are threat actors sitting on systems and networks, and it's just a battle of weeding them out and pulling them out of networks. And on that, just taking it a step back a little bit for our audience, perhaps, that aren't familiar with critical national infrastructure, how would you best define that and what falls within the CNI space?
So I think there's 13 different sectors that make up critical national infrastructure. So there's your sort of energy, gas, water, nuclear, chemicals, and a few others that I can't remember. You put me on the spot there.
No, I appreciate that.
So it's those kind of things that we would take for granted normally as part of our day-to-day life that you just assume are going to be there. A bit like the transport network as well. That's another CNI sector.
And do you think the UK public in particular underestimate how much is actually at stake?
I'm not. Yes, I think so. I think all of us, even myself, perhaps take it for granted that the trains are going to run when they should do, or the motorway network's going to remain open, and that when I flick the switch, I mean, I couldn't tell you the last time that we actually had a power outage. That the power's going to be there, and I think. Without wishing to be a doom monger, I think we're underprepared for if some of these things are not there. Kind of what do we do?
No, I totally agree with you. I think if platforms such as this, the aim is to raise awareness and educate people so that not just them but people around them can be prepared for these sort of things. And
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a prime example of that, if you remember, I think it was during the pandemic, KFC ran out of chicken. And the chaos that subsequently ensued, people calling the police, all sorts of things. So you kind of have to think, how would people cope if some of the critical national infrastructure was perhaps not available to them for a period of time?
Not well.
Exactly. But then part of my role is to make sure that if there is an outage, we're suitably prepared and are resilient to that so that we can continue to supply the essential services.
look, we touched upon sort of the convergence of both the digital and physical worlds, and of course you've got responsibility within your role at Yorkshire Water there. And you mentioned OT. For our audience that perhaps don't understand the concept of OT, what is OT and why is it different from IT?
Yeah, so OT, operational technology, is one of those things that is absolutely critical to us, kind of thing that you won't necessarily find either at all or very much of in sort of either retail, financial services type of sectors. Operational technology is essentially the bits of kit, I won't really call them, IT, that are deployed across our network and in our production facilities that are actually instrumental to producing water or treating our water. So these could be things like programmable logic controllers, PLCs that are opening valves, dosing chemicals into the water, controlling pressure across our network, things like that, that if somebody was to be able to hack into those and get access to them, they would be physically controlling something that would have an impact on the real world. So some of the security measures that we might deploy to secure that kind of technology are very different to sort of traditional cyber controls, to the point where something that we might deploy in that particular area is a physical block, so actually go and weld a piece of metal onto a valve to stop it opening beyond a point, things like that.
That's very interesting. And as you mentioned, many of these systems perhaps are legacy. They were built a long time before digital transformations as such. So how do you even begin to protect something like that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. A lot of the sort of operational technology in particular is fairly old, the kind of stuff that you try not to touch unless it breaks and then you go and fix it on fail. A lot of the modern tooling that we have either can't see it, can't work with it. It's just physically not connected to the network in a way that that tooling can access it. So that is one of the big challenges for us, is to how you can secure that and get visibility of that. Because of course, either if you don't know it's there or you can't see it, how do you go about securing it in the first place? So it's one of the problems that we have. I do have a dedicated, we call it cyber physical security team, who are particular experts in that kind of security field. And to be honest, it's one of the areas that is quite niche, specialist, and very, very hard to find people with skills in that particular area.
And why is that, if you don't mind me asking? Why is it why is it difficult to defend physical systems, and why is it so different defending the physical systems between the data, the data?
Yeah, it's different. So, kind of a lot of students that are coming out of university are very well versed in sort of traditional information security and sort of cyber skills. When it comes to kind of almost bridging between the technology, IT, and engineering world, it's quite unusual and quite hard to find people who've got skills in both camps. IT is generally more about how do we keep people out, whereas the OT stuff is how do we keep people safe. And it's a very different mindset of thinking about how you secure the systems as well.
No, most definitely. Back earlier in my career, I was actually a sort of engineering recruiter, helping food and drink manufacturing, energy suppliers, and we always used to struggle when it comes to upskilling these mechanical engineers from an electrical standpoint. And going back 6 or 7 years ago now, when I transitioned to cyber, it was helping to bridge the gap between those electrical mechanical engineers and perhaps giving them a baseline understanding of network engineering, for instance.
Yeah.
And those individuals now go on to become security engineers. So it is encouraging that there are pools of talent there. It's just obviously having a know-how of how to upskill and redeploy those individuals, I think.
Yeah, that's right. And I think one of the other things that we're facing into at the moment, that kind of operational technology has always been security through obscurity, but kind of as we mentioned, quite a lot of it is old and needing to be replaced, and it's being replaced with stuff that, of course, we want to be IP connected. We want it linking in with the network so we can get the data back out of it, we can control it remotely and all that kind of good stuff. And of course, as you do that, you introduce the new technology and the lines between the sort of IT and the engineering elements get blurred. And it's kind of a new way of thinking about how you have to secure that. So that's something that not just us, but kind of almost everybody in the sector that's got these kind of challenges is having to face into at the moment as well.
And do you think that the main driver has been, the need to protect, or do you think it's been regulations like the CRA, for instance, is driving change now?
I think as part of just maintaining our kind of water production facilities and our distribution facilities, as part of that, we need to upgrade them. The society's growing, we've got more people we have to deliver water to and treat water once it's been used. So we're kind of going through a refresh of and an updating of our facilities. And as a result of that, some of the older kit is needing to be replaced, or it's starting to fail, it's reaching the end of its life. And it's kind of almost that natural replacement that is driving this as opposed to anything else.
Looking a bit more at the people side of things, you work with Cyber First, you work with Cyber Bradford. What sort of message would you be able to give to many of the younger people out there who might be considering this as a career?
So I think the media tend to portray sort of cyber and careers in cyber as somebody sitting in a hoodie indoors in front of a computer screen with sunglasses on, looking at lines and lines of code. And the vast majority of, if I think about my team, for example, what we do is not that. And I think that sort of portrayal in the media doesn't help necessarily attract people and get people interested in cybersecurity. When I go out and I talk to kind of pupils in school around, what do you think a career in cybersecurity looks like? They all know what a pen tester is, but don't necessarily have any view at all about what else that we might do in cybersecurity. So one of the key things that I always try and do is talk about some of the other roles. So if I think about my team, I've got sort of 20 odd people directly that work for Yorkshire Water in the cyber team. And the vast majority of them are not necessarily deeply technical. What is really important is the ability to go and talk to customers, users in our case, around why cybersecurity is important, understand business challenges, and then try and work out how we can appropriately secure those. Yeah, there are elements of some of the deep technically cyber things when we're looking at incidents and getting into that investigation, but that is not what we kind of are doing all the time, or what everybody's doing all the time. And I think talking to people around what they could potentially do in the field is really important, and the fact that it is not just deeply technical pen testers that we employ. Absolutely.
100%. And if you could maybe redesign the pipeline for cyber talent, just following on from that, what would you change about it from its current state?
So I think that is really challenging. Where do you start? I think kind of the starting in schools is key, and getting that message out that there are many things that you can do in the cyber field. It's not just computer science and deeply technical stuff. I think one of the challenges we've got there is, how do we build the links between education and industry to kind of talk to that? Because the teaching staff are, bound to a syllabus. They've got to teach what is on that syllabus, but kind of what I think we need to do is build the links to try and bring it to life in industry. I think that will go some way to helping on that pipeline. And then I think it's kind of giving people the opportunity to come and sample things, try things out, perhaps from a cyber perspective, that they wouldn't necessarily get a chance to input into on a sort of day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to a little bit more about the CNI side of things, is there any particularly, maybe if you were to break it down, specific challenges in protecting CNI that isn't talked about enough?
I think so we're regulated. That can bring challenges. It also brings plenty of opportunities as well. And one of the challenges that we kind of face as a sector is the way the regulation works is kind of on 5-year planning cycles. And of course, we know that cyber moves very rapidly, and it's kind of a bit of a challenge as to how the regulation can keep up with the kind of evolving threat landscape. That's probably one of the biggest challenges that we have. And we work really closely with the regulator to kind of make sure that we're discussing these. We've got the Cybersecurity Resilience Bill coming soon, which hopefully will change the focus away from NIS. Some of the things that are proposed in that will mean that it's able to better respond to the kind of rapidly changing threat environment than current legislation. So quite looking forward to seeing what that will bring. But yeah, that's certainly a challenge, not just within the water sector, but across the whole of the CNI space.
Yeah, and indeed. And is there anything that organisations, and again, I know these are slightly flippant sort of questions to some degree, but what can organisations do today that might make some of the biggest differences tomorrow?
So I think it's obviously depending on the size of your organisation as well, but the things that are probably equally applicable to absolutely everybody out there are basic stuff, hygiene factors. Make sure you're patched, get all of your patching as up to date as you possibly can. Multi-factor authentication, make sure that's switched on, try and avoid SMS if you can, and strong passwords, good old password hygiene. It's the basics.
We always go back to the good old passwords, no matter how advanced we get, no matter how many years go by, it's all about the passwords. And
absolutely. And kind of getting those basics in might just mean that you are more difficult to get into than kind of somebody else, and the baddies will just go to the next most easiest target after you.
Like the old car door mentality, isn't it, really? I guess
it is, absolutely.
And for everyday people, for Gen Pop, if you will, what's one simple action that maybe then can improve personal resilience?
So probably going to go for the good old phishing awareness. It is, if I think about sort of general public, probably the thing that you can probably do best to protect yourself is always be skeptical of emails that you're getting. If it sounds too good to be true, it almost always is. And don't click links, open attachments. Always try and verify that the email has come from the website that it claims it has, as opposed to trusting necessarily straight away. That's probably my one top tip.
Yeah, and a good one.
Appreciate you sharing. And Matthew, when you look to the future, say 3 years, not even 5, what's keeping you most alert? What are you looking at in terms of horizon challenges, perhaps?
Yeah, so from a sort of horizon future base, I think identity is a big thing. We are kind of having another look at that from a how do people access our systems. So looking maybe to mitigate some of the phishing risk by going passwordless as much as we can. That's something that is definitely on my agenda. And then if I think kind of outside of Yorkshire Water, I know everybody says it, but looking at AI and how we appropriately secure that. And then looking even further ahead, or how far ahead, we don't know, thinking about quantum and how we respond to certificates and the security that we've got in place in a kind of post-quantum world. That is on my list of things to be thinking about at the moment.
No, certainly a high on priorities. The CISOs and security leaders that we've been conversing with, even the last several months, we've seen some encouraging steps when it comes to quantum readiness and safety, for instance. Certainly, I feel that we're almost over the hype of AI and we're about to hit the next wave in the next couple of months. Hopefully that's driven by positive change.
Yeah, fingers crossed, yes.
On the flip side of things, what gives you confidence that we can defend critical systems? And if you had a message to people that are listening right now about this matter, why is it important?
So I think one of the reasons why I'm positive is if I think about the water sector, we've got a very vibrant community. We obviously don't compete, so we haven't got that element, but we get together regularly as a group. We share ideas, we share problems, and we kind of work together to contribute to those solutions. And I think it's that kind of working together as opposed to trying to compete with each other that is probably going to help us as a UK PLC, to use the term, make sure that we are keeping the bad guys out and protecting our critical national infrastructure.
No, it's encouraging to hear that there is collaboration, because I think in other sectors, organisations are perhaps guilty of putting up massive walls around themselves and not sharing information. It doesn't need to be anything confidential, of course. It just needs to be things that are malicious or best practices how to help.
Yeah, absolutely, Warren. I couldn't agree more. And I think that was kind of one of the things that pleasantly surprised me when I started out in the water sector, that there is that kind of open sharing. And I guess I would encourage that more widely if you can, for the cyber community to get together and share more. Because whilst other organizations may be competing against each other, actually we've got one common enemy that we are trying to keep out, and that working together, presenting that united front, hopefully will have an effect.
No, most definitely. Sort of moving on from that, still in that theme, what does effective cybersecurity leadership really look like, especially when you're protecting critical national infrastructure? Obviously, the collaboration piece is a key aspect of that, but what other aspects are important?
Yeah, so if I think from a personal perspective, my role is kind of, there's several aspects to it. One is thinking ahead, looking to the future, like we've discussed now. From a strategic perspective, where are the next threats coming from? What can we do to always increase our posture? Because to do nothing is to go backwards in this space. And then we've kind of got the operational side of things as well. So on the day-to-day basis, we've got security operations centers that we're running, incident response teams, and kind of balancing those two things is really, really important for us to make sure that we're maintaining our security.
Appreciate you sharing. And Events are obviously important. Having that face-to-face time with your peers and gaining that cross-sector knowledge, of course, is equally as important as collaboration with your neighbours, for instance. So when you step into the room with other cyber leaders, what conversations are you most wanting to start, and why?
I think it's kind of almost like we've already covered, really. It's that sharing of ideas. Where do you think that, where are the next threats coming from? What are you doing, obviously, to try and mitigate them? Not necessarily detailed technical details, but kind of what sort of things are you pursuing in order to kind of close some gaps, perhaps? How are you looking at cyber maturity? That's another big one. And then, what interventions are you perhaps making on that? How do you decide what it is that you actually need to do? Because you've got all of these things coming at you from every direction. You've got vendors trying to push their latest and greatest tools on you as well. It's really good to just kind of get out there and meet people and discuss topics like that.
No, most definitely. And what one lesson do you think you can bring from the water sector and add value to perhaps those in the financial services or other sectors when it comes to security leadership?
So again, if I sort of think I hear quite a lot, not necessarily from financial services, because they tend to have quite mature cyber functions, but I certainly hear from other sectors. I'm struggling to get on board with the board, for example. I'm struggling to get investment from that, and I think the advice that I have, fortunately, I've got really supportive boards and I've got a really supportive exec. But going and talking to them in business terms, as opposed to, you probably noticed I've not mentioned threat actors once. We talk about baddies. Threat actors means nothing to most people. Go and talk to people in terms that they kind of understand, translate it into business problems, business challenges, and that I've found opens kind of doors. People get back to where we started, the why you're trying to do this for them and why it's important.
That makes sense. And effective communication, I think, it sets people apart, especially when you're trying to get that board buy-in or even at grassroots level. Analogies are something that we see a lot of leaders sort of use to effectively communicate, and you of course need to tailor that towards your audience, for instance. And we touched on it briefly a moment ago, but you're going to be attending the Cyber Leadership Summit this November in Manchester, for instance. It's an intimate gathering where security leaders come together. But why are small gatherings such as this important?
I think it's back to that being able to share in a kind of safe, secure environment of some of the challenges that you may be facing, find out how other people have tackled those challenges as well. Learning from other people that have perhaps either done something or about to do something that you're thinking about doing is really important. And then also some of the keynotes, I suspect, will be more forward looking perhaps. You never quite know what interesting tidbit you're going to pick up of, oh yeah, we perhaps need to go away and think about that, something that's not on the radar at the moment.
Certainly, I certainly agree with you. And I know we've met in person. We've done a few things at universities together and grassroots level, and I think those are equally as important as the leadership ones because there are bright and new ideas coming through from universities and academia, for instance. And with that in mind, for up and coming cyber professionals, or for even those that want to step into a leadership position, what one key piece of advice would you give them to help them learn about influence and legacy?
So I think probably, and this might be slightly controversial, there's a big certificate sort of industry surrounding cyber, and the number of people that kind of come to us when they're applying for jobs that present with a big long list of certificates is large, and I think they assume that because they've got all of the certificates, it's kind of a shoe-in into the role. I guess my advice would be we're actually looking for rounded individuals. So yeah, it's great that you can show that you can do all of those things and are an expert in them, fantastic. But we also need people that can go and talk to users, can go and talk to the business, take their sort of requirements and also feed our requirements back to the business in terms that they will understand. That that's really important. So I'd kind of focus on more rounded CVs, try and get opportunities to demonstrate, even if it's going and working in, say, a charity for a period of time. All of that stuff is really good experience and shows to us that you're able to go and engage with people, and kind of not just a big long list of technical certificates that you've got, which is good in a way, but doesn't help present that rounded view.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing beats practical experience and getting involved with people on a face-to-face basis over academia, which is vitally important. But yes, I think there is a balance, Matthew, so we heartily agree. So as we come to the back end of things, obviously, I'd normally ask our guests, what's your vision, your mission, and your purpose? But I think we kind of get that with regards to yourself. What does the future hold? What is it? What's the immediate future, I guess, and the sort of short to long range future for you and Yorkshire Water in a security capacity?
Yeah, so I think, without going into too much detail, it is continuing the maturity journey that we've been on for the last 5 years. That, as I said, sort of never really stops. Real big focus for the next 5 years is on the operational technology maturity, security maturity, and kind of bringing that up to parity with the level of maturity that we have on our sort of information systems type estate. So that is kind of the real big focus for me. And then, of course, developing the team. We're going to be introducing a whole load of new sort of tools, and we'll get more visibility as time goes on into our operational technology estate. So we're going to be having to upskill the team and possibly grow the team for the new bits and pieces that we're going to be implementing.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting time. It's an exciting time, and it's probably, I think, a revolutionary time, really, within tech and cyber security in general, with everything that's happening now. So we wish you the very, very best of luck with it, Matthew, and it sounds like it's in safe hands. So thank you for your time. Really interesting episode. A lot of value to be found in today's session for a number of reasons. And if people want to continue the discussion, we invite you, as always, to join the Secure Cyber Connect platform, where we offer a range of solutions for both tech and security professionals at no cost. Expansive community access, mutual mentoring, online networking, exclusive interviews such as this, with panel discussions, masterclasses, live events coming throughout 2025 and beyond. Thank you so much, everybody. Matthew, thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me.